Yo, welcome back to another episode of On the Spot Sports. This will be episode 67. And in today's episode, we have a very special guest. We have Cody Porter coming on the show from the Knoxville Ice Bears in the SPHL, the Southern Professional Hockey League. Cody's played in the Western Hockey League, the Federal Hockey League, the SPHL, and he's spent time in the coast with the Florida Everglades. So we talk a lot about his junior career, especially in the WHL, and then we talk about his pro career, and we also get into talking about some NHL and how we think the bubble is gonna go so far for the season. So this is a really good episode. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. And we'll see you in the next one. Yo, welcome back to another episode of On the Spot Sports. I'm Jack, and I'm alongside my co-host Tyler. And today we have a very special guest. We have Cody Porter. Cody is a current professional hockey goaltender with the Knoxville Ice Bears of the Southern Professional Hockey League. He has a very decorative resume so far, playing in the Western Hockey League, the BCHL, QMJHL, the Fed, the SPHL, and spent some time in the coast. Welcome to the show, Cody Porter.
Hey
How are
guys,
you?
thanks for having me. Good.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. We know it's a short time that we just figured this out yesterday, so good to get you on finally.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you've been in quarantine recently because you came back from the States into Canada.
Yeah,
So like, how's quarantine going for you?
it's been good. It's been pretty chill. I was down in the States for about a month and a half training down there, which was awesome. I'm sure we can get more into that a little bit later, but yeah, it's been good. The quarantine process. I mean, for those that don't know, when you go to the U.S., you come back to Canada, you got to stay home for 14 days. So um, I know a lot of people have been like, "Oh, that sucks. Like you've got to, can't go out or can't train." But I kind of like it. Like the break's been kind of nice, just because you grind so hard and train so hard, and just to be able to kind of relax, and especially with hockey on now, and like I'm a big baseball fan too, so I've just been watching the games, and you still do some stuff, you still stretch and stay loose, but it's been nice to just rest the body a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Have you just been doing off ice stuff, or is it just mainly stretching?
In the quarantine period.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been stretching. We went really hard with strength training for about a month and a half leading up to the quarantine. So yeah, it's just been stretching, which has felt great because like I was feeling it. I was really sore by the end of my trip down there. It's sore in a good way, but I was getting ramped up. And then with the news now that training camps probably aren't going to open until December, we've got a lot of time to make improvements.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have those breaks, especially since you were training for a month and a half really hard. So it's easy, it's good to get that downtime and just make sure yourself's recovered and all that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so can you tell our viewers a little about yourself, like when you started playing hockey, what the teams you played on, what made you become a goaltender?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm from North Vancouver, Canada, and started playing goalie when I was 9, so a little bit later than most guys. I grew up locally, played minor hockey here, and then at about 14, I went to an academy called POE in Kelowna, BC, which is a kind of a private academy. Played there for 2 years, and then my 16-year-old year, I played junior A in the BCHL for West Kelowna. And then at the end of my 16 year, I signed with the Vancouver Giants, joined them for playoffs, and then was with them my 17 year, with them to start my 18 year. And then I got traded to Calgary in the Western Hockey League, played there my 18 year and 19 year. And then late in my 19-year-old year, I had a bad shoulder injury. So that really affected me. And then decided not to get surgery on that, played my 20-year-old year. I actually went to Kelowna's camp, and then we were still having issues with the shoulder. So I ended up getting, because as a 20-year-old, you can get like traded between leagues. So I ended up going to St. John in the Q, and went out there, played well, but my shoulder was still pretty bad. So they were like, hey, we probably think it's best if you get surgery just for your long term, if you want to play at a high level, like you're going to need to get surgery on it. So I ended up getting surgery on it, and that process was a bit of a waiting period. Ended up playing in a few different junior A leagues just in the meantime, kind of as a rehab assignment. But by that point, I wasn't. I was probably playing at about like 30%, so it was tough. But got the surgery. Kind of wish that was an off season like this. Like looking back, I'm like, why couldn't this have been 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Because there's obviously a lot of time now. But yeah, so that off season, I got the surgery mid season, my 20 year. So basically missed my whole 20 year. And then my 21-year-old year, I just started the year. I actually went to Peoria's camp in the SB, and then I went to like, it was tough. Like as a first year guy, you're just coming off a major surgery. Like nobody really knows how you're going to perform and play. So I ended up going to Watertown in the Federal League, and like it was different. But for me, it was just like I needed games and I needed shots, and that was a team that they were okay. I got a lot of shots there. Like I mean, I must have played like 11 or 12 games there, and I think I had half the amount of shots that I'd usually get in a 40-game season. So it was perfect though. Like that's exactly what I needed. And I ended up that year, I just took any call up I could get to the SP. So that's why I played for so many teams, because it was more just about, hey, this team needs a guy for a weekend. You're going to play on the Saturday of the 3-and-3. Do you want to go? And I would take that. So I ended up playing for, I think, 3 different SP teams. And then I ended up landing in Knoxville for the end of my first year, played there for a couple months to end that year, played well. And then this year was my second year. And I kind of was a few different spots. Started the year in Florida in the East Coast League at their camp, and that was a great experience. Played in preseason against Orlando, played well. And then, yeah, I was mostly in Knoxville again this year.
What was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome after that big shoulder injury where you didn't have surgery for a while, and then when you finally had surgery, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome from that?
I mean, when the injury first happened, like they kind of thought, Calgary thought I'd be out for the year. I wanted to come back. Like we were right on the bubble for playoffs. So I came back with, I think, 6 games left in the season, and we were like 4 points out of a playoff spot, and we ended up getting in as the 8th seed. But I think the toughest thing right away was just feeling comfortable with it. Like we played against the Regina Pats in playoffs, and that was the same team I got injured against. And like I think in the playoff series, they had 3 goalie interference penalties. So like they were taking a lot of shots, which, I mean, some teams do that. It's playoffs. I mean, even if you watch the NHL right now, like there's a lot of guys running the net, and it's just how it is. So I think the biggest thing for me originally was just feeling comfortable with it. That was before the surgery, and it felt okay. And then my 20-year-old year, it was weird. Like it just felt terrible. So that was like, I was like, yeah, I can't even move my arm, and like it sucks because you're not playing your game and you can't really do much. So after the surgery, though, to answer your question, I think the biggest adjustment, like we had a great surgeon do it. It actually feels great, right? Like it's felt great ever since. I haven't had a problem with it. We went hard on the rehab. I haven't had any issues with it. I know that's most guys after surgery, they notice it. Like I couldn't tell you that I had surgery on it. I played baseball when I was younger. I can throw harder after the surgery than I could before. Everything's just better. So he did a really good job on the surgery. And like when I tell coaches and stuff, because they always ask, like, "Oh, how's your shoulder?" It's great. Like it feels great, and I haven't had any problems with it. And yeah.
Yeah, so what was your mindset like throughout the entire like process over the shoulders? Like what were you thinking like throughout the course? Were you just focused on like rehab, or like were you like focused on like the negative side of it, I guess you could say?
No, I tried to keep positive. I mean, it's tough when you have an injury like that. It was pretty bad, actually. Like, I won't lie. Like early on like when it happened, we weren't sure what the long-term consequences of it were, or how long I'd be out for. And like, it was a pretty bad injury. I don't know, just a weird play, but yeah, no, I tried to stay positive. I mean, I had a goal in mind of coming back that year, which we were able to accomplish. And so that was good. I mean, it was if you take from when it first happened to when, it ended, in terms of being fully healthy, it was like a 1.5 year process. So that was tough. But I think that the hardest part was during my 20-year-old year, because it was like I played well in St. John, but it was kind of like one of those things where every game I played, I was like, oh, today could be the day that it could get injured again. And I kind of tweaked it when I was out there with about like 5 minutes left in the game. We ended up winning 3 or 4-0 against Charlottetown. And obviously, you want to finish the game when you're 5 minutes away from a shutout. So just kind of played through it. And then after that, it was just kind of like, they kind of asked me, and my agent asked me at the time, like, do you want it? Like, what's your, like, you want to play pro? Like, you're going to need to be healthy. So we made the decision to get surgery there. It's just, they wanted to do certain steps. They wanted me to get a specific guy to do it, because obviously with shoulders, knees, and stuff like that, you don't want to mess around. So, that was in about October, November that we made that decision, but they didn't want me to get the surgery until February. So I was kind of like, well, I don't want to just sit around for 4 months if I can, play. So he's like, okay, like, come back, we'll look at you. And because the surgeon was out of like the Vancouver area. So we're like, okay, we'll look at you. And I was at home for a bit. He looked at me, and it's a long flight from St. John to Vancouver. So I knew the coach in West K, and he was like, hey, like, we own your rights. Like, why don't you come play here? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll play a few games. I think I played like 4 games. I was absolutely awful. Like, just didn't feel comfortable at all. And I think part of it was when we came back, like, I had a few physio people look at it, and they were kind of manipulating it a lot. And for that like 10-day period in Westgate, I could, like, literally going high blocker, I could only go up to here. So, when you're thinking about that the whole time, you notice it. And it was tough, because like, it's frustrating when, you've spent the last 4 years in major junior, and then you're going down, and it's a rehab assignment. So you have to, take it with the right approach. But at the same time, like, it's not fun when you're giving up 6 goals in a game, and you're like, okay, if I was healthy, this would be a 2 or 3 goal game. So that part was probably the hardest. And then I went back out east, and St. John had really great trainers and doctors that wanted to kind of look at it, and they put me with a team that they had a few like prospects in, and I didn't know anything about the league, anything about the team. I was only there for like 3 weeks, but yeah, so that part was probably the toughest, just because you're trying to play, but it's almost like, would it have been better not to play? I mean, it didn't really matter, but that was the hardest part. It's tough though when you come back, because teams are like, okay, well, you did all this stuff when you're younger, like, we want to see that, and then you got to get teams to trust you again. So for me, my first year pro was just all about reestablishing myself. This year was kind of a weird year in that I bounced around a bit, but I really feel going into next year, it's, from everything I've talked with, and people that have talked to me, coaches, whatever, like, this is a huge off season for me, and I expect to have a really big year this year. And so far, like I said before, training's been going great, and probably fastest I've ever been, and in really good shape right now. So we'll make the steps to be in absolute best condition come December.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're gonna do next for this season, because, like you said, you've been putting in the work, and just from like your Instagram videos, it seems like you're really like feeling good about yourself, and hopefully it translates over to the game time whenever the season starts.
Yeah, no, it's been a good off season. It's been weird. I grew about 1/3 of an inch this summer, so I don't know how, but taller now than I was at the end of last year, and I look bigger on the ice. Like, I've filled out a bit, single digit body fat right now, but like, I just look wide on the ice, and I'm moving fast. And the one focus for us is that we've been working on is just quality of movement. That's the biggest thing. Like, I've got really long legs, so how can we use that to, my advantage and whatnot. And we've really broken down the quality of movement aspect of it, and all that stuff. And like, my butterfly is wider than it was last season, and I just have a lot more control in my hips now. So there's a lot of areas of my game that I'm like, okay, I can see that I've made big changes and big strides in it. And I started feeling it right before the pause last year. Like, when I was in Knoxville, I think my last 6 games, I was, 4-1-1 or 5-2 or something like that. And I felt great and was playing really well, playing consistent. I think I had six or seven games in a row where it was 2 or less goals. Like I was feeling good. And then we had our bye week, and then we came back and we were getting ready for a game, and then we got canceled. So that was tough, but it was good to be, taking the steps that you want to be taking late in the season. And it would have been a good playoff run, but unfortunately, like everybody else except for the NHL, that didn't get to happen. So yeah, but for next year, it's going to be good. I'm excited for it. I'm expecting a big year, and with the coaches that I've talked to, we've got pretty high expectations, so it'll be good.
Yeah. So how was your team last year in Knoxville, and what place did you guys end up be finishing
Yeah,
in
the
before the pause?
team was good. We had a lot of skill. We played a really offensive game, but it worked a lot because it was a team that it was kind of a weird year because I was there after Florida for camp, and then they were kind of like, oh well, we want to go with the same guys, and so they ended up almost getting a loan to Quad City. I played 10 minutes. It was really weird. I went there and played 10 minutes of a period and faced a 5-minute major, and that's it. So that's all I got out there. And then it was just a weird start to the year. I mean, that's the one thing I've found about SP teams is a lot of them don't like guys that are going to take call-ups to the coast. Not every coach is like that, but some coaches are like that. And I was just honest. At the start of the year, I had a really good camp in Florida. I played in preseason, didn't give up a goal, was feeling really good. Came into Knoxville, had a good preseason there too. Seemed like my whole season was preseason. I think I played 5 games in the preseason between 2 leagues, but yeah, felt really good. And the coach asked me, he's like, hey, if you got a call up early in the season, would you take it? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, okay. And then 2 days later, he's like, yeah, so I'm going to go with the other guys to start the year. I was like, oh, okay. And then, there was some rumblings that an East Coast League team wanted to bring me up right away, but they got to go through coaches to do it. So that's another thing people don't realize is a team can want to call you up, but if your coach doesn't want you to go, they don't have to return the call. So it's a weird kind of game like that. But yeah, it was a weird start to the year. Ended up going to Quad City, like I said, for literally 10 minutes of a game, and then went home for 3 days, and then went to Macon for 4 games, and that was tough. I had some family stuff going on, so was dealing with that and trying to play hockey at the same time. It's not easy. That team was, I think, last place at that point in the season, and then ended up going back to Knoxville where I spent most of the year. So it's kind of like a go to a few different teams then come back. But yeah, Knoxville was good. It was a good team. I like the guys. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Really was friends with a lot of guys on the team and have a lot of respect for guys there. And it's a great city. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it's a pretty fun place. Yeah. So right where the university is.
Yeah, that's definitely on my books to come up to because it does seem like a fun, nice place to be. So I'll definitely have to come up and see the city.
Yeah, it's a cool spot. There and Nashville. They're both pretty sweet.
Yeah, so it was interesting hearing that you played 10 minutes of that one game, and then that the coaches don't have to pick up the call if they want to call you up. So I was
most coaches are pretty good about it, but you'll get the odd guy that at the end of the day they're trying to move up too, right? So the coaches want to move up as well, and the only way they're going to move up is if they win. So they don't want guys just leaving. So it's kind of one of those happy medium things. But again, some teams are better for that than others, and they don't really like guys getting called up. So that's one thing about there. So there's a couple other teams like that in the league too. But
yeah. So you said you're up in the with the Everglades during the camp for the East Coast. So how's camp over there and your experience in the East Coast over there?
It was good. They're a Nashville system, so they had a pretty stacked team last year. I went in and had a really good camp. Unfortunately, a week before training camp, Milwaukee signed another guy. So that's another thing. if you're not an NHL or AHL signed guy, you're going to get bumped out by those guys, no matter how good you look in camp. Doesn't matter if they start the season and you get 5 games, the other 2 guys each get 5 games, and you put up 3 shutouts and you're the best goalie in the league, they still have to cut you if they don't want to carry 3 goalies. So that's a tough part. Had a really good training camp, though. It was a great learning experience. The systems there are so detailed, and they run the same systems as their NHL team. And it was cool to see. Like in the preseason I played, we played against Orlando, which was or is Tampa Bay's team, and to play against some pretty good goalies over there. Like the goalies they had were, like at the time it was like Fucali and Spencer Martin. They had Mike Condon for a bit. Like you get that. You get good goalies coming down because there's only it's not that fall of a drop from the NHL to the East Coast, and it's not that big of a jump from the coast to the NHL because it's only 6 jobs. So yeah, so that was cool. It was a good learning experience. I mean, I felt like I was ready to hit the ground running when I got back to Knoxville, and then kind of got put on hold when he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna like go with these 2 guys." So that happens. You just kind of got to deal with it.
Yeah. So what was it like playing in Florida? Like, is the ice like noticeably different, or is the ice from it being humid out, or do you not notice it at all?
It's different. I mean, the ice is a little different everywhere you go. Like that's the one thing. Like for me, I notice is like when I played in the Western League, like we got spoiled with playing in Calgary. Like our ice it's NHL ice. It's really fast. But I pretty much always keep my skates the same. Like I'd always sharpen them the same. There would be no changes. And then you go to, especially in the SP, because there's a lot of Southern teams. With the Everglades, they do a pretty good job with their facility. Like that's mostly where I was training out of the last 2 months was down there, and the ice was actually pretty good, surprisingly. It's not a shot at the place that I skate up here in Vancouver, but the ice was probably better down there. So hopefully they can figure it out up here with their ice quality. But yeah, the ice was fine. But there's some spots during the season that the ice gets really bad. Like I notice, like there's some spots in the SP where it's like you feel like you're playing on synthetic. Like it's just brutal. So you got to adjust your sharpening based on where you're playing, which is kind of different, but the equipment managers are pretty good about that. So like I know Knoxville typically has harder ice, which is more like up in BC here. So I'll get my skates done a bit sharper, and then if we go down to Pensacola the next day, it's super soft. So I'll be going between a 7/16, and then I'll be running at 5/8 when we go to Pensacola, and then if we go up to Peoria, I might go to a 3/8. So it's just depends where you're playing.
Yeah. So you were training in Florida recently. So like, what was it like training in Florida, and how was training overall from
It was
that like
good.
1.5 month adventure you had?
Yeah, no, it was good down there. I mean, I was part of the reason I went down there is I was struggling to get ice up here, which is kind of funny to think you can get ice in Florida, but not in Vancouver. So, seems like we might still be facing that problem a little bit. They're kind of picky on who can skate and when they can skate. So, or they charge you a crazy amount. But it was good down there. I trained between 2 goalie coaches. One, his name is Brett Schaefer. He's goalie coach for Huntsville, which was the first SPHL team I played for. Really good, really good guy, young guy. Like so I think he's only like 24, 25, but he gets it. Like he's a good goalie coach, and always learned from him. And we got on the ice quite a bit. And then the other goalie coach I was working with is his name's Josh Robinson, and he's the goalie coach of the Everglades, and another guy that thinks the game really well. And we were able to make some improvements to my game that I feel have made big differences. And we'd film every skate and go over the video, and the difference between when I got there to when I left was good. And it's also good too to get people's opinions. Like when a goalie coach tells you look noticeably better right now than when I saw you at the end of the season, or when I saw you last September. Like that's good to hear too, because these guys are honest. Like they're pros and as well. And it's great to think, oh, I think I look better. But when a goalie coach that hasn't seen you in a few months, or he's seen you play in the season and then sees you now and says, wow, like you look a lot bigger, you look faster, you're moving better. Those are things that you can look at and say, okay, like I'm putting in the work. And it's paying off. So that was a positive. But yeah, the training down there was great. It was hard though. Like I think there was one period where we didn't have any days off for like 3 weeks, just grinding it out in the gym every day, doing yoga like 4 times a week, skating 5 times a week. Like I wouldn't want to go that hard for the whole summer. Like I said, I think you'd be dead by the time the season happens. But at that point in time, it was great to really take those steps. And now I'm sitting in a really good position because I feel good about my game, and I can manage how I want to approach the next 3.5, 4 months before training camp starts.
Was there a specific aspect of your game that you tried working on like the hardest or more than others going into that year for camp?
Going into this year or going into last year?
Oh,
like coming
year.
Up. Oh, going into last year?
Yeah.
Just tried to work on everything. I mean, typically at the end of the season, you're going to look at what you did well and where you didn't come up with certain saves. And that's something I try and do. I try and do all the time. I mean, when I was in junior in Calgary, we gave up a ton of shots from the slot. I mean, anybody that knows our team would know that. Like, that's a tough team to, like, one thing about major junior people don't realize is if you're on a good defensive team, you'll be 920. But if you're on a bad defensive team, if you're at 900, that can be really good. So it's situational based on the team. So going into camp last year, I went over a lot of video from my first year pro and said, okay, where was I giving up goals? Where were teams targeting me? And it was good. It was good to also talk to a goalie coach like, Brett, who, he's a goalie coach for a different team, and we do a great job of separating that. We don't talk too much about that stuff, but he still puts scouting reports together on guys, including myself, of, when they play. And I'll ask him, I'll be like, hey, what was an area you guys are trying to target? And he'll tell me, he'll be like, hey, we're trying to target a certain spot. And that was the biggest thing for me working on last year. Last year, I thought was a good year for reads. I thought that I, was reading the game well. I think it's taken a big step this summer. I mean, every summer you're trying to do well. I think this summer is probably the biggest steps I've taken in a while. Like I feel like I'm noticeably a different goalie than I was even like 4 months ago, which is kind of cool. And just slightly change my style just a little bit. So, I mean, it'll be noticeable once the puck drops. But I mean, if anybody watches me practice right now or do a goalie session, I know I've posted a few clips, but my style's a little different than last year.
Yeah, I've talked to Brett a few times, and like he seems like a very like knowledgeable guy and like willing to help in like any aspect that you want him to. So it's good that he's helping you, even though you're not on the same team. But like it's good to have that like extra set of eyes, especially as a goaltender, and like making sure like you're working the areas you should be and getting better each day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing too. Like, we've talked during the season, but we never talk about the teams, or like we'll talk about hockey, but never anything specific. In the summer, it's different, but like, there's just with coaches and stuff, like, his team's coaches wouldn't be too thrilled if he was talking to me about their team, and my coaches wouldn't be too thrilled if I was talking to him about, our team and what I'm doing. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's, when you play against each other's teams, it's fun, but we try and keep it professional. We've done I think, and I've told him it too, I think we've done a really good job of just kind of separating the business side of it. And, so that's been awesome. But yeah, he's a good goalie coach. I think he's got a bright future. It's like anybody, a goalie coach is trying to move up just like a goalie. So, he's had some success in the SP. He won a championship 2 years ago. And, I know that he'll probably get some looks to be an East Coast League goalie coach. And then, if your goalies do well there, you move up to the A or into an NHL development role. And that's kind of how it goes for him. So he's got a bright future. He's doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So 2018, 2019, you began your professional career. So like, what was it like signing your first pro deal? And like, how'd that deal come around? And like, and did you just look around for like that opportunity, like to play games, or like, what was that situation like?
Yeah, it was a kind of a weird situation. It came together pretty late, just because I didn't get the green light to get cleared. Like you have to be medically cleared after a surgery, and I didn't get that until like 2 weeks before camp. So I actually missed out on an opportunity to go to an East Coast League camp my first year, which would have been a great opportunity. I don't know if I would have made the team just because, like I said, you got to get teams to trust you. But I had a team be like, hey, we want to sign you, but I hadn't been cleared at that point, and medically they can't sign you if you're not deemed healthy. Like it's considered being injured. So I ended up like last minute going to Peoria's camp, and we didn't really know what to expect. It was just kind of like go to camp, see what happens, and like they're a really good team. Like they're a team in the SP, but they could probably beat teams in the coast. Like they're that good. They get good players. They get guys that have played, multiple years in the American League that decide, what, I got a house in Peoria, I'm going to play for them, and they're pretty good, and they got a good coach and good systems. And I didn't end up making the team. I had a pretty good camp, but at that point, it was just where can I go and get the most games? And I had a guy who used to be a scout, used to be an NHL scout, that was like, hey, I got a buddy that coaches a team in the Federal League, and he's like, you need games. Like he's like, you need to prove yourself. You're not in a position where you can just wait for another SP team to pick you up. You're gonna need to go play games and go get shots. And I was like, all right, sounds good. Let's go get shots. Now, when I went there, I wasn't expecting to get 50 shots a game. I mean, when he said go get shots, I wasn't, I think my first game I had like 48 shots, and it just kept going up from there. So, but it was great. Another good group of guys, and it's interesting. Like you get, especially in the Federal League, it's interesting. You get three kinds of players. You get the guys that are kind of young guys that are just trying to figure it out, and then you get guys that really want to get called up and they want to get to the higher levels, and then you get guys that are they're getting paid pretty well to be there. They're veteran guys and they're just content, but they're probably could be playing at least a level or two higher than they are. But yeah, getting games was huge. I mean, that was the biggest thing. You got to play games. If you haven't played a game in a year, you got to play games. So that was the start.
Yeah. So what was it like facing so many shots in a game, especially when you were playing in Watertown? Like what was it like, and like what was your mindset overall?
It was good because I just, it's such a difference between practice and training and then actually going into a game and getting those reads and stuff. I mean, it was good. Trying to think about it, like there's some weird stuff. Like I just that I look at it and I'm like, how did that even happen? Like in terms of decision making, like there was, I want to say I'd have to pull up I'd have to actually pull up the stat sheet on that in terms of game by game. But I want to say I had a stretch of like 5 games where I had 50 shots every game, and like we went like 4-1, but I still had like a 3.8 GA, but we were giving up 50 shots. So um, yeah, I don't know. The thing I'll probably remember most about that league was we played a game, we won. I think it was like we won 3-2, but I made the most saves that a goalie's ever made in regulation for a win, and it was like 72 shots or
Oh my
something
gosh.
stupid like that, like just no defense at all. Um, so I was just dead. That's probably the most body weight I've lost in a game. We were on the road. It was a hot building. It was a game up in Michigan, and yeah, they had 70 something shots, and I was just like, and I didn't know that was like a record. Like I don't care. Like I was just like, oh, okay, like whatever. But I was like, it just kind of kept adding up. Like they were at 22 in the first period, and then by the halfway through the game at the TV timeout, they were, I want to say like 38. And I'm like, Jesus, it's going to be a busy night. And I thought, oh, well, it'll just kind of slow down. And it didn't. So then they came out hard again in the third. And yeah, I was pretty gassed that game. And then the weirdest part was I got up the next morning, and, I'm assuming I'm not going to play even though we won. But the coach had a superstition that like, if you win, you play again. And then he's like, yeah, you're going to play again. I'm like, I'm like, all right. And then in my head, I'm like, what's this guy talking about? I just had 72 shots. And then we went out that night, and I think we lost 3-1 on an empty net, but we gave up another 46 or something like that. So it was a busy 24 hours, 2 games, because it was a day game the next day too. That was the best part. It was like a 2 o'clock game, and yeah, I think the other goalie was scratching his head as much as I was, because he's like, we're kind of both like, man, like, why am I playing this game? So I mean, you never don't want to play, but like when you face that many shots, you're just kind of like, you have like no energy, and so but
Yeah,
it was
that's
fun.
insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. I can't imagine getting 72 shots on goal. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like living in the city of Watertown, like being like close to New York, and how overall, like, how was it living there?
The apartments were actually really nice. It's probably out of any, well, that's not true. Huntsville had the nicest apartment. It was the biggest apartments. Like, it was like a house here. It was a cool experience. We were living like right off of the army base, so it was pretty unique. It was cold. That's the biggest thing I remember. I mean, we were pretty close to Rochester and Syracuse and Buffalo. We were only like 2 hours from Buffalo, so it was good. I mean, I'd been to New York City before, but I hadn't really been to like around the states. So um, it was cool in terms of like, it wasn't the worst place to be in terms of like, on an off day, a lot of guys we'd go to the Bills game, so that was kind of cool, and go to a Sabres game. Went to one of those, and then went to Niagara Falls. So there was some stuff to do. Probably not the warmest place I've been, but yeah, it was fun. I had nothing negative to say about about living there.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I was actually talking to Watertown earlier this year, and with all this unknown,
Yeah,
it's hard to see where it's going, because I have no idea what's going to happen with the season and all that. So it's definitely going to be an interesting time.
yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So then you got moved after you played in Watertown. You went to the SP, right, in Huntsville,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I
So
was
like,
in
how was
Huntsville
that?
for a week. It was good. Again, like when I got the call-up opportunity, the coach at the time that was in Watertown, he's not there anymore. He was really kind of against me going. He's like, hey, like, it's a short call-up. Like, why don't you just stay here? You're playing a lot. And for me at that point, it was like, you know what, I want to, I've played 13 games here. My numbers are good. Like, I want to go up there and prove that, like, my shoulder's good and I'm back and I feel good. So took the call up. It was a 3-3 weekend. I played the middle game, played well. We won, I think 5-2. I made 43 out of 45. So it was a perfect game, because it was like exactly like all the other games on the other team. So it was good. I wasn't there very long though, because we were on a road trip the whole time. So I literally showed up on a Wednesday, practice Wednesday, was at the apartment Wednesday night, practice Thursday, and then right after practice we drove up to Illinois, and then we were there, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday was an off day, and then Tuesday I was out of there. So it was good. I mean, I turned that game into a trade opportunity when their guy came back from the East Coast League, and ended up going to Fayetteville, where I felt like I was there forever. I was there for like a month and a half, 2 months, and I played one game. So they carried 3 guys for a while, and um, it was good. I mean, would have been nice to play a bit more, but it was fine. And then after that, I actually went back to Florida for like 2 weeks just to chill. Like, I trained down there, not for any team or anything. And then I went to Elmira for, again, it was like a week. Like, I played like 3 games, but it was only like a weekend in the Federal League again, just to get some games. And then right away got called back up to Knoxville, and then I finished my first year pro there.
Yeah.
So that
So
was
what was it hard getting moved around a lot? Because you've played in a lot of different cities. Like, is it
yeah.
hard like on to get used to, or like, are you used to it by this point?
It is in some ways. I mean, the biggest thing, like, people I don't think get, and I get asked it a lot, is like, it's so much different than junior. Like, in junior you stay with one team, and like it's a bad thing if you're getting traded or moved around. But like the biggest thing people in pro don't realize is like, you got to go where you got games. Like for me, like I know that, and from everything I've been told and what people have told me is like, I need to have a good year, and then I need to get into a full-time job in the East Coast League, and when I get there I need to have a good season. And you talk to anybody, if you can have a good year in the coast, you can open up a lot of opportunities for yourself. So for me, and when I do get that opportunity, I'm going to approach it the same way that I did when I was in the Federal League, getting called up to the SP. And then, when I get that opportunity in the coast, I'm going to really try and take advantage of it. And moving around's tough. It's tough in terms of like, you do get used to it, but it's tough in terms of like, you're dealing with so many different structured teams and so many different defense. And it's nice to know who you're playing with too. Like, you get to be friends with guys on the team, and then you move around. So this year will be a little different. Like I've said, I think we said before we were on the air here that like I have signed with a team for this season. It's going to be a great opportunity. I'm going to get an opportunity to go in there and really be the guy, which is what I need. And I need to have a good start to the season. And then, if there's a good call-up opportunity, maybe we look into it, but we'll see how it goes. At this point, I don't know if they want me sharing that I signed with them. They've kind of kept things pretty quiet, but yeah, so I can say I won't be back in, I wanted to go back, but we just couldn't agree to terms. I won't be back in Knoxville this year. So yeah.
Yeah, so in your first year pro, like you faced a lot of ups and downs. Like, how do you like overcome like your downs, and like what were some of the ups that you guys had throughout your first year pro?
Yeah, first year is a learning year. I mean, it's a lot different than junior. You're living, with another teammate. You don't have billets, so you kind of got to deal with, all that stuff that comes with it. You have a lot more responsibility, so you got to manage not just your hockey but your life as well. You don't have anyone there, cooking you meals and stuff, or doing anything like that. So I think there was more adjusting off the ice than on the ice. I thought the second year was a lot easier in terms of, even though there was still a little bit more moving around, and was dealing with some stuff, like I said, early in the season. I thought I just was kind of more familiar with like, everything. And I think in junior, there's a tendency to, you just think like, you just really have to worry about hockey. You don't have to worry about, you know, real life stuff in terms of, paying certain bills and having to, do that fun stuff. So it was a bit of an adjustment, but I didn't think I had too much trouble with it. So yeah.
Yeah, so what was like the biggest transition period from juniors to playing pro? Like what was that transition like, and were you like used to it? Did you get like through it easily, or was it hard at first?
Um, well, I mean, I spent a lot of time in major junior. So in terms of, like I said, like living's a lot different. If I'm comparing it to the SP, it's really interesting. Like people ask all the time, like, what's the jump like, or what's the difference like? And there's differences for a goalie for sure. I mean, in terms of the speed of the game from the WHL to the SP, I don't think it's much different. But in the SP, everyone shoots. I mean, you'll get the odd guy on a dub team that can rip it, but everybody in the SP is bigger, stronger. I mean, they're grown men. They shoot harder. Traffic's bigger. If there's a net jam, they jam harder. I definitely notice it's a jump, partial just because of age. I mean, it's no different than you get the, Canadian World Junior team will lose to a CIS team just because, they're old. So it's definitely a jump. I don't think people realize how good it is in terms of like, people up here, they're just kind of like, oh, like the SP, like I haven't heard really good things about it. I mean, the league's taken a lot of strides in the last 5 years. But there's a lot of good hockey players out there, and there's only so many jobs. And when it comes to goaltending, it's even harder because, there's only 10 teams, there's only 20 jobs, and, guys don't age out. That's the thing people don't realize too. Like you're in junior, you get 5 years, and then, you age out. In pro, if a guy wants to play for 10 years with the same team and he doesn't want to move up, he can stay there. The coach likes him. They're not changing it up. So, and when you're trying to look for a team where you're going to be the guy and you're going to play, because that's what you need to do and play well to move up, there's only so many jobs. So, and there's always someone coming to try and take your job. So you got to always be playing well. And, there's no real period where you can kind of take your foot off the gas.
Yeah, that's also where like opportunity comes, because you want to play games, but you have to play good. And
Yeah.
And like you said, you moved around a lot, but you're looking for like opportunities to play. So like you want to play, so it's like you're getting games, and like that's further developing your career.
No, for sure.
Yeah, so going back to when you played in the Western Hockey League, you played for the Vancouver Giants your first year of playing in the
Yeah.
in the WHL. So like how was it playing in Vancouver, especially since it's near your hometown? And like what was the overall experience with it?
It was awesome. I mean, we didn't live at home. Like I lived out in about 45 minutes from where I'm from. So we were billeted and stuff like that. We had a training center out there. At that time, I didn't drive. So like I was like 16/17, end of my 16 and then 17. So I wasn't driving yet. And I mean, it would have been probably better if I was, because then I could just come home whenever I wanted. But it was great. I mean, it was the team that I grew up cheering for. Ever since I was like, before I even played hockey, I always wanted to play for that team. So when I got the opportunity to, it was just kind of like, hey, like, here's an opportunity to do something that you've always wanted to do. And that's really rare to be able to do that, because as you know, like you don't really get to pick your team. I mean, I wasn't a guy that was drafted in the Western League. But yeah, I mean, things just kind of came together. It was a good season. Our team wasn't very good. We didn't make the playoffs, but I played 40 games as a 17-year-old, which was good, and learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun. It was cool. It was exactly like it was when I watched the team when I was younger, and it was really neat.
Could you say that was like your number one like overall dream, playing for that specific team, moving up through the ranks?
For junior, yeah, I think I mean, obviously, the goal always is to play in the NHL, and it still is. And I think there's a lot of steps that I need to take to get there, but you don't really look at it like that. You just look at it as, I need to play well with the team that I'm on right now, and then when I get an opportunity to get called up, play well there, and then you see what happens. In terms of junior, yeah, it was great. I mean, for me, in terms of playing long term in major junior, like when I got traded to Calgary, that was a good thing. But I'm happy I had the year in Vancouver, a year and a bit in Vancouver. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so you said before that question that you played 40 games for Vancouver.
Yeah.
When you were 17. So like, what was it like playing 40 games, and especially as a 17-year-old? And
I only played like 3 out of the first 20. So that's the thing people don't really realize. I think I was 32 out of the last 45 or something like that.
Wow.
So we changed coaches halfway through the year. And I barely ever played with the first guy. We started the year with 3 goalies. And I didn't play much the first part of the year, and then they fired the coach, brought in a new guy. And coaches are funny. We got a coach his name's Claude Noel. He was the Winnipeg Jets coach before they got their coach they have now. And he was a great guy. But yeah, just kind of one of those things. Like I was playing really well when he showed up. He showed up right at the start of December, and I kind of went on a run. I ended up getting goalie of the month for December that year. And just kind of the timing worked out perfectly. Like I was winning games and playing well, and a coach just shows up, and he's going to go with the guy that initially he wants to go with. And our team wasn't great, but I felt like I was giving the team a chance to win most nights. And yeah, so I played a ton late in the season. I mean, my other goalie there was great too, and awesome goalie, great guy. So it was just it was a weird situation in that, like, it was kind of going in, like he was a top end draft pick for them, played his 16 year as their starter, was a 17-year-old starter, and then that was his 18-year-old year, and it just kind of it was a weird fit, and that wasn't really the plan. Like he was their guy, and I kind of was playing more. So I don't know if management agreed necessarily on the coach doing that, but he was back his 19 year, and that was kind of like, they got another coach the next year because like Claude just came in for that year, just in the meantime, and that's kind of when the opportunity came for me to get traded to Calgary because they were like, hey, like, we're still going to go with him as our guy. We have a new coach. Like, what do you want to do? And at that point in time, my agent was like, hey, like if there's an opportunity to get you on a team, especially for your draft year, that you're going to play a lot and be on a competitive team, well, we'll try and find that. And yeah, it kind of just all came together, and then got moved to Calgary, which turned out to be a really good thing.
Yeah, so how important was recovery for you? Because you played 32 of the last 38 games. That must have been
Yeah.
really hard on you.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, travel in that league's brutal. Like if you're playing for Vancouver and you play Brandon, I think it's a 30-hour bus ride, and they don't have, like, I think there's only one team that has a sleeper. Like that's the one thing about the SP that I love is every team's got a sleeper bus, and they're actually really nice. So
That's nice.
yeah, but in the Western League we didn't have that. So like for me it was tough because I was just sleeping on the floor or trying to sleep in a chair, and it wasn't very the travel kind of sucks. So, but I mean, you just kind of go with it. Like that's the one thing too. Like you just kind of roll with it. And I mean, it was my first year, so just kind of going off of adrenaline a lot. But yeah, recovery is important. That's one thing I don't think I took as seriously as I do now. Just how to take care of your body. Like I'm not saying I wasn't healthy, but like just certain things. Like back then I'd play a game and we'd have a day off the next day, and I would just be like, oh, we won, like I'm going out for dinner and stuff. Whereas, now it's more like I need to look long term. And that's something that the trainers have really said too. Like, after a game, I might stretch for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, even though we don't practice the next day, or maybe we even have 2 days off. And it's just that long term effect. Like, you'd be amazed. Like you play a game on a Saturday night, maybe you don't practice till, Monday or Tuesday if you're lucky. If they give you 2 days off, that can be nice too. And you'll work out on Monday, but you'd be amazed how much better you feel on Wednesday and Thursday when you just take that 30 minutes after a game and ride the bike, stretch out, and do all that stuff compared to just not. So that was probably a big difference from for me from junior to now.
Yeah, I definitely didn't take recovery as serious as I do now, especially when I played four or 5 days in a row of just men's league, and even just men's league, it's just brutal on your hips and everything,
Yeah,
especially as a goalie. So I didn't like really stretch that much, but like after that, like my hips were destroyed, and like I was like I need to stretch, like, and
yeah,
that's what I've been doing, and it helps so much.
yeah. No, for sure. Like it's body mechanics is the biggest thing. And it's like I was saying before, like it's been a really cool off season so far for me, just because like I'm moving a lot differently, a lot more economically. And you hear about, if you're watching, the Jets play. I don't really watch them too much, but obviously I'm gonna, watch them in the playoffs. And you hear about them talk about Hellebuck and how he's moving, and that's kind of the same thing like we're working on, is just using my size and using my body to my advantage. Like I'm a bigger guy, I'm 6'3", and like I fill the net well, so we're just trying to use that. And it's just crazy how much of a difference it's made. Like even from last year, I look at certain plays that on video that I got myself maybe into a bit of trouble, like, maybe was out of position or had to scramble a bit. And I'm like, now I'm just like, why would I do that? Like I have more range now and I can just twist my hips a bit more and get over, or, you know, just kind of slide or push into saves more, and learning the difference. And it simplifies the game a lot. Like, that's the biggest thing that we're working on. And I mean, I won't give away too much with it, but it's just a really simple philosophy. And I mean, you can probably pick it up in some of the videos I've posted too. And I know some people make comments and stuff, which I really couldn't care less about. But one of the big things we're working on is if a puck's in tight, I'm walling up. I've got the size. I'm a big guy. I don't think people realize exactly how big I am on the ice, like in skates and stuff. Like there's no need for me to draw my hands forward if a guy's shooting, 3 feet from me, like just wall up and block. And, with the body mechanics that we're using in the hips, typically if a puck hits you in the arms or in the chest, it's going to fall right into your pads, and you're going to be able to make an easy cover. And I just find that is a lot more predictable for me, knowing where the puck's going to hit my body and where it's going to go, than if I just come out with my hands in front and, maybe it hits off your glove and falls down and they jam in the rebound and stuff. And, it might not look as exciting of a style, but it's really effective in tight. And then obviously if a guy is in a shooting spot and you can react, I'm going to react. So there's a bit of both there. But I know some people have been saying, like, why is this guy just like walling up? Like, what's he doing? And it's just, that's what we're working on. And, I wouldn't do it necessarily if I was 5'11", 6 foot, but, I'm 6'5", 6'6" on skates. And I just, even when I'm in the RVH, like, I think there's, like, when I'm down in it and I can lift my hips up too and block more, but I think there's only probably 3 or 4 inches at net by my shoulder. So it's, that's what we're working on. And, yeah, it's made a huge difference so far. So I'm really excited to see what we can do in the next 3.5 months.
Yeah, for sure. And unlike you, I'm on the smaller side of goalies, so I'm like 5'10". So like I've been working with like a college goalie, a friend of mine, and like just staying taller in the butterfly, because like usually like you'd like start to lean over, and just like staying tall just like
Yeah,
helps cover more of the net for sure.
100%. I mean, look at UC Sardos. Like, it's, he's really effective at it. And again, like, I think size can play a role. Like, I know, you get to pro and stuff and it's all smaller gear, smaller chest pads, smaller pants, smaller pads, and that stuff can make a difference. I actually find it's easier. Like, I like the smaller gear. I've always been a fan of it because you just know where the puck is. You don't have, wasted space of a chest pad and you think, oh, it hit me, but why did it roll in? So now if you're on angle or not. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to play the game. I mean, I know a lot of guys that are shorter by goalie terms, and it can be really effective. It's just you gotta be dialed in. There's some games where like I've talked to guys and NHL guys too, and they're bigger guys, and they're like, yeah, I don't feel great every game, but I'm big enough that if I don't feel I'm tracking the puck, not necessarily for me, but like what a goalie was telling me, I won't say who it was because I don't know if he wants me to, but starting goalie in the NHL, and he's like, hey, like, I play 50 games a year. Not every game I feel great. There's some games where I just don't feel great, but instead of trying to catch pucks, I'll just block because I'm big enough that I can get in the way and just get in front of pucks. And I know that, I can still make 28 out of 30 saves by just doing that. So it's interesting to hear the philosophies. And I think that's the biggest thing that the NHL guys are able to do. And that's the difference between an NHL guy to an East Coast League guy or an SP guy. Like, I mean, there's only so many guys. I think any goalie in the East Coast League could go into an NHL game and play well for a game. Not necessarily for a long period, but everybody's good enough that they can play a game. But how are you going to do it over 40 games? How are you going to do it over a career? And how are you going to play when you're not feeling well? Because that's the big difference I notice. Like, guys that are really good, they're able to play well when they're feeling bad and not playing average or below average. So they're pretty good at being consistent. And yeah, so that's the biggest thing I'd say with that.
Yeah, that's some great insight, especially because you have to be consistent, especially at the
Yeah,
NHL level. You're playing 40, 50 games, like you said. You have to stay consistent, and I'm sure a lot of people can play one NHL game, but can you do it consistently? Probably not. That's why people probably aren't in the NHL right now. So it's
for sure.
definitely like a great insight that you just said there.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, there's a lot of good goalies out there. Like, it's, that's the one thing I noticed, like in the SP2, like people, are like, oh, like, some people are like, oh yeah, of course I'll play there. And it's like, there's so much about like resume, and every year it seems the goalies are getting better. I mean, there was one team this year in the SP, both their goalies were drafted into the NHL. Both guys were drafted in the NHL, played 4 years D1 as starters. They're both on the same team. That's 10% of the league right there, just in those two goalies, because there's only 20 jobs.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like, it's a great time to be, it's a great time to be a team at higher levels because there's so many guys to choose from. It's tough as a goalie. Now, when you get your opportunity, you got to make the most of it. But I think this is probably the best time where if you do go into the East Coast League and you go on a run, you play 30 good games, I was just talking to a goalie the other day who, got a contract out of that, played in the coast, wasn't drafted, and, had a bunch of NHL teams talking to him because he proved he can play in the coast. And that's something that, with NHL teams, they look at and they say, okay, well, would we rather draft a kid in the 5th or 6th round in junior, and we don't know how he's going to play in the pro game, or would we rather sign a free agent that's maybe 22, 23, 24, even 25? It seems like goalies just keep getting older with that. It's already proven himself in the East Coast League, we can sign this guy cheap. They'll take that now because those guys are proving that, well, I've already proven I can play in the East Coast League. So, how will I do at the next level? So there's a bit of a change in philosophy going on right now, but that's probably the meal ticket. You got to play a good year in the East Coast League, and you got to get your chance because there's only a certain amount of jobs. And, if you have it's one of those leagues. If you have a great season, you're going to open up a lot of doors, whether that's an NHL contract, AHL contract, or a really good offer over in Europe. But if you go to that league and you don't play well, you're either going to be, kind of forgotten about, or they're going to find somebody else. So, for me right now, especially in the SP, there might be an opportunity in the East Coast League to start the year. We'll see. But whenever that opportunity comes up, I'm just going to be ready to, play well and try and take advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that mindset that you have, and it's going to get you far. I know that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so going back to juniors and the WHL, you played a few games with Vancouver before getting traded to Calgary. So what was it like getting traded to Calgary, and did you feel down about yourself, or did you just see it as another opportunity?
Yeah, we started the year with 3 guys. They wanted to go 3 guys for a while. Like I said before, they had their guy from the year before. They wanted to be the guy still, and it was good for me. It's mixed emotions. I wanted to be the starter that year, the bona fide guy in Vancouver. And when we kind of figured that wasn't going to be the case, my agent at the time was kind of like, hey, put a list together of 5 teams, and I'll call those 5 teams and we'll see what the interest was. And it was kind of funny how it works because the team that traded for me in Calgary, it wasn't a team I was expecting. It was one of those teams where I was like, wow, it really was surprising. I thought it was going to be someone else. You kind of get rumblings and stuff. It turned out to be a pretty big trade. It was like a 6-player trade. So, which was kind of cool. I got to go over there with 2 of my teammates, and that was neat. And it was weird. I showed up there and they had 4 goalies. In Calgary, they had, I don't even know who it was, but they had 4 guys, and they told me right away, they're like, hey, we're going to get this sorted out before the weekend. So then by the weekend, it was just me and a 20-year-old goalie, and ended up, I played both games that weekend, which I thought was kind of weird. They have a 20-year-old, why would I play both games? And then right after that, they ended up trading him or putting him on waivers or something. And so they were like, yeah, you're the guy, you're going to play a lot. And that was great. When I heard that, I was like, all right, and that was a totally different challenge. That was a tough team it was a good team, but it was a tough team to play for because we'd only give up 18 shots a game, but we'd give up 5 of those shots would be, breakaways or 2-on-1s. So it's tough. There's not much margin for error when you're only giving up 18 shots, and you're still giving up, half those shots are in the slot. And, if you give up 2 goals, you're under 900. So it's a tough team for numbers. You can't really pad your stats. I think, one game I had a shutout there. It was 12 shots. It's that's not going to a good period. So it's different challenges you face, but it's good to be able to play on a team that gives up a lot of shots and not a lot of shots. And it's different. But yeah, the trade was fine. I didn't really have any issues with it. It wasn't by surprise. So.
Yeah, so you were the guy there in Calgary. So and then you guys made the playoffs. You played a few playoff games. What was playoff hockey like in Calgary in juniors?
Yeah, it was cool. We kind of got screwed over a bit. Our first year we didn't have a ring, so there was a week off in the series. Our first playoffs for me was in I seem to always get the good teams in playoffs. I don't know why. My 16 year in playoffs for Westgate, we played against Vernon. They were hosting the RBC Cup. I played that playoffs too as a 16. My 17 year, we didn't make the playoffs, but we played like 4 games at the end of the year against Kelowna. It was a weird schedule. We had like 2 weekends in a row against them. They ended up going to the Memorial Cup final. So they had a really stacked team. They had like Draisaitl and all those guys. And then my 18-year-old year, we played in playoffs against Red Deer, who was hosting the Mem Cup that year. So it was like, and then my 19 year, we went to playoffs and played Regina, and they ended up going to the Mem Cup. So it was like every year, it seemed like the teams we were playing in playoffs were teams that were, stacked. Which I mean, typically when you're a lower seed, that'll happen. But it was tough. Like we had a good team in Calgary my 18-year-old year. We were right at the top of the standings in the Eastern Conference for a long time. And with the way the playoff format is, like they were doing the NHL format where you play within your division. And unfortunately, the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference were all in the same division. So that was the first year they went to that playoff format. So originally we were 3rd place in the conference. We would have played a 6th seed that we knew we would have beat pretty well. But because of the standings and how they had it set up, Lethbridge was the top team in the Eastern Conference. Red Deer was 2nd, and we were 3rd. So we had to play Red Deer. So it really kind of was like, man, we would have been better off being a wild card than playing that. So it was tough. Like it's interesting. Like when you're playing against a team that's hosting the Memorial Cup, they get the benefit of calls. Let's put it that way, because the league wants them to do well. Like they don't want a Mem Cup host to go out in the first round, especially when they're showing every game on Sportsnet and stuff. So I kind of noticed that. I mean, the refs are great in that league. I don't want to make it sound like that, but you know what I mean. Like there's always that kind of like, why did we get 5 penalties and they didn't get any? And they get a 5-on-3 with a minute and a half to go in a game that's tied. Like, how does that, for like penalties that don't even make sense? So, but it was a good learning experience. It was fun. I mean, playoffs are great. It's, I mean, that's the biggest thing that I remember. And it's kind of ironic that that's not happening right now. But the biggest thing I remember about playoffs is the crowds. Like they're awesome, both in Calgary and Red Deer, and then in Calgary and Regina. Like everywhere we went, it was sold out. And then in Calgary, we were still, drawing in about 10,000 a game. So, the crowds are huge. So it's weird watching playoffs on TV with no crowds. And the thing I didn't know until I talked to a player about it was the crowd noise they show on TV isn't in the rink. I didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah, it's dead quiet in there. I had no idea. I was like texting a buddy of mine, and I'm like, oh, like how is it? Like he's in the Edmonton bubble. And he's like, yeah, like it's good. And I'm like, yo, like they pumped crowd noise in or what? He's like, no. He's like, that's just for TV. He's like, we were watching the game earlier in the day, and he's like, oh, like I guess they've got some noise going, and because you can hear people cheering. And he's like, yeah, they've got like the odd video of like fans from home cheering, but he said it's kind of weird. It's just dead quiet. They've got everyone's recorded goal horns that go off, but there's no noise. So he says it's kind of weird. And like the TV broadcast that they're doing, it's like all delayed and they're blocking everything out. So I don't know. I mean, I've seen it on Twitter, but I'd totally go for the pay $5 extra and get the live version with no noise, no commentary, just hear what everyone's saying. So
it's definitely weird without any fans, and it's interesting that the like all the clapping and all that, the sound effects aren't like actually in the stadium.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Like I didn't know that. I thought that was like, oh, they've got crowd noise. Like I remember watching the Montreal-Pittsburgh game, and Price would make a big save and there'd be crowd noise. I'm like, oh, that's cool. At least there's some noise. But it's just fake noise.
Yeah.
So
I don't like the delay either. I want to hear what they are saying, if they're F-bombing.
Yeah, well, the TV thing, it's weird because like there's times where like the game will be on, but they'll still be at a commercial break, so they'll push the broadcast even further back. And like somebody was saying at one point, it was like a 32-second delay on something, and then when they are at a TV timeout, they'll speed up the next commercial. So there's a little too much editing going on, I think. Like they just gotta, like I get that they don't want to hear what people are saying, but like it's tough when you know the game's on because you've got the update on the app, like the NHL app, the clock's ticking down and you're still at TV timeout for the next 20 seconds. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's
yeah,
definitely weird for sure. So
yeah,
we have a few more I have a few more questions for you.
sure.
So like what tip would you give like a younger goalie looking to get to that next level?
How old are they?
So
It makes a big difference.
let's go high school, college.
High school, college, I think play well at the level you're at. I think so many times people, and I know I had a tendency to do this when I was younger a little bit too. They have a tendency to look ahead. You just got to play well with the level you're playing at. You know, you can't always control where you're playing or what league you're playing in, but you can control how you play. So I'd say that's the biggest thing. Not get too far ahead of yourself. Don't say, you know, you don't want to be a kid that's in high school or in college or even in junior and being like, well, why am I on, you know, why did I get cut from this higher team? And you know, or even in minor hockey, like, oh, like I'm too good for this double A team or I'm too good for this single A team. I should be on the higher level. And it's like you know, you've got an 880 save percentage or an 870 save percentage. Like, you know, be 910, be 920 and then talk, you know, and not that's not always in your control. Like, as you know, if you're playing on a really bad team, it can be tough to put up good numbers, but just control what you can control. That's the biggest advice I'd say. And if you're a young kid, have fun, enjoy it. Don't worry too much on the little things.
Yeah, and then my final question is you're in the new Lefebvre lines. Like
Yep.
how's Lefebvre pad for you?
They're awesome. I mean, I've dealt with Pat directly. So I've kind of got to go through him and we've built a pretty good relationship. And I'm excited for what they've got going. I mean, it's been kind of a teaser because I've kind of known for a long time the roster of goalies that are going to be in them for the playoffs, and then there's some other guys that aren't able to be in them for contract reasons. And then I've seen the list of guys that have said they're going to want to be in them for next season, and it's quite a bit. And there's some, you know, pretty surprising names. I heard about Anderson pretty early on and I was like, are you sure? Like, they're like, yeah, like he's going to switch. He's like, they're like, don't say anything because like he's still under deal with Bauer. But
Yeah.
yeah, so stuff like that was kind of surprising. And, you know, like I knew Bennington was going to switch because he's got a good relationship with the Lefebvre family as well. And I think a lot of people don't realize like that Lefebvre made all the gear for pro guys and major junior guys for the last like 10 years. So even though, you know, maybe, you know, you're in a CCM pad and you see Carey Price's in that, like his pad's a lot differently made. Um, and with that being said, like, you know, everybody that's bashing CCM and saying, oh, the quality's shitty and this and that, like all the goalies are switching. It's like, you know, unless you're playing major junior or you're playing pro or you're getting pro return stuff, your gear is no different than it was before. And it's still, you know, good gear. I think there is a difference between like I've worn a Lefebvre CCM pad compared to a custom CCM pad, and there is a difference. But you know, yeah, I like the gear a lot. I'm actually going out to Montreal in a few weeks. I'm gonna go meet up with Pat and the family, and we just got to finish up the detail on the dates with that. But that'll be a cool experience. But yeah, I like the gear a lot, and I was fortunate to be one of the first guys in them, and able to go back and forth on ideas for a new line, and it's cool. They've got some exciting stuff coming.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely down the line want to try a Lefebvre pad because all the reviews that I've seen have been really good and like the pad slides like butter and like it's super light and all that.
Yeah, no, it's a great pad. I think that I think people who get them are really impressed by them. I think it's a better version of what they were when they were with CCM. They're light. I mean, I know for me, like a stock pad of the 20.1s or 4.7 pounds, whereas we were able to make mine 4.3 just by changing something around. I don't know if people will get quite that customization. I know they don't want to change up the weights too much in them, but it's great. I mean, I wouldn't want to go any lighter. I know that companies are all saying, oh, like let's go as light as we can go. Like I don't know if I'd feel comfortable going below what I'm at right now, which is 4.3. Like even now it's kind of like, you know, I can slide across and if I lift my leg up just a little bit, the pad's off the ice. So
Yeah.
you do want a little bit of weight, you know, to your pad.
Yeah, exactly. So Cody, Thank you so much for coming on to the show. We really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you in the NHL one day soon.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on, and keep up the good work with the podcast.